Hey, it's Chris Goff, and in this video, I want to share with you this pre-foreclosure deal I did and give you the story behind it, because the story tells me the motivation, the owner's situation, and ultimately guides me through the deal. I want to share that with you along with the numbers, before and after pictures, the ad that sold it, some tips that can make you thousands, and a couple of mistakes I made. And as we shift into a change in the market with foreclosures, my goal is to help you gain the knowledge to successfully work the business and get started on the right path. So I actually found this deal on the MLS and it was labeled a short sale. Now, normally I don't go after short sales because there's nothing short of a short sale. And I lived in the same neighborhood, so I had to go drive by the outside. And when I drove by the outside, here's the picture of it. Obviously, the trees are overgrown. It needs some TLC. And this looked like a beautiful home. It's in a beautiful neighborhood with 2 golf courses, a gated community. So I definitely wanted to research this property a little bit more. So having access to the MLS, I did some more investigation and I found out, I was like, yeah, why is this a short sale? And they're asking such a low dollar amount, because during a short sale, a bank is generally selling it less than what is owed on the property. So I was just, okay, this got the light bulb going off and say, hey, I need to do some more research on this property. So I decided to call the listing agent on the property and I asked her, I said, hey, can you tell me a little bit about the property? And the very first thing that she said was, do you have a realtor? And I'm like, well, yes, I have realtors that work with me, but I just thought I would get some information from you. She said, well, your realtor can pull any information. I said, well, let me rephrase the question. What's the situation with this property? I noticed that you're asking, this dollar amount, but this property in tip-top shape would be worth a lot more. I'm just curious, why is it labeled a short sale? She said, the owner owes right around what we're trying to get for, but we understand that we may get less for it, not much less. I said, is there any way that you can meet me at the property so I could just walk through and really kind of analyze the inside and really determine how much work it needs? And she said, well, if you have a realtor, they can let you in. And I'm like, okay. So, me as the investor, I really need to find out a little bit more information. Otherwise, I could just call the owner. But I figured, hey, it's being represented by the agent. Let's go through the proper chain of command here and see what we can get. So I told her, okay, no problem. I'll have my agent let me in the property. So we walked through the property and I'm like, gosh, this thing just needs lipstick. It seemed overwhelming with the trees and the inside was really just the flooring just needed to be redone, some paint, new carpet, and some fixtures. And really this property could probably put back on the market for a pretty hefty profit. So I called the realtor back and I said, hey, can you meet me at the property? I did go through it. I wanted to ask you a few questions. She said, well, how about if you just come to my office? So I'm like, okay, I'll go to the office. So I show up. It was Keller Williams. And I go in and we sit in this huge conference room that they have. And her name was Pearl. And I asked Pearl, I said, why is this a short sale? In just the basic research that I've done, do you think the owner would be willing to deed me the property to where I can make up the back payments and fix up the property, put it back in tip-top shape, and sell this property without going through a short sale, which is going to damage the owner's credit for up to 2 years? To me, I think that's the right thing to do. And I tell you, she was taken back when I said that. And she said, Chris, let me call the owner and I'll call you in a couple hours. I said, great, nice to meet you. Let me know. So we leave and it's probably 45 minutes later, the realtor calls me back and she said, hey, the owner wants to do the deal. And I'm thinking, well, of course the owner wants to do the deal. Me as the investor, look, if this thing goes through foreclosure, it's going to damage his credit 7 to 10 years. If he goes through a short sale, it's going to damage his credit for 2 years. I'm going to stop both of those by making up the payments, which is going to bring the loan current. He's going to deed me the property, which I'm going to have ownership. That way I can fix up the property, turn around and resell it. When I resell it, it's going to pay off the debt. And of course, I'll be making his monthly payments during that process. Why would he say no to this? That's what I'm thinking as the investor. And the realtor said, yes, he wants to do the deal. And I'm going to back out of this deal. I just want you and the owner to work this out because it totally makes sense. And I agree with you. I think this is the right thing to do. So she gives me his contact information and really seal the deal from that point. So let's now that you see the intro to the story, which I always feel the story is important. Now, this particular moment of time, the owner had moved out of state. So this property was just sitting here vacant. And obviously, it's being neglected, didn't have money to make the payments. You're not going to have money to fix up the house. So let's walk through this process here from this point moving forward. So our first goal is to stop the foreclosure process. And this is pretty simple. All we have to do is simply make up the back payments, which would be the reinstatement amount. Once we do that, the loan is actually brought back to current, and we just have to continually make payments on that. So that's going to stop the entire foreclosure process. And I can tell you right now, the banks love that. They don't want to go through this foreclosure process because it's going to cost them a fortune. Next, we want to fix up this house as quickly as possible and get this property on the market to sell at a retail price. And then last but not least, we want to get a testimonial from the owner, because you're not just going to do one deal. You're going to do multiple of these deals. And man, it sure is great to have testimonials when you get on to that next deal and show the owner, look, I've helped these people over here. I know I can help you too. So some basic things that we have to get from the owner. Number one, we need that back payment amount. As I talked about, that's what's ultimately going to stop the foreclosure. Another name for this would be the reinstatement amount. The owner should be getting this information in the mail, and they can obviously just pass that along to us so we understand, okay, is this deal even going to make sense financially? So we need to understand that dollar amount. Next, we need to get the current loan balance. So I'm going to ask the owner, hey, I need you to get a current payoff, or I can have them sign an authorization to release form, and I can contact the bank and actually get that information on my own. We need to figure out what the monthly payments are. So once we make up the back payments, we have to continually make payments. Otherwise, we're going to go back through this whole foreclosure process all over again. And are the taxes paid? Are there any other liens sitting on the property? And we don't even know if the title's even good. So obviously we can do a basic title search just to really figure out what else is going on with this property. And the owner may not even know all of these other things that are happening. So you definitely want to take the time, even if it costs you some money up front to get this basic title search. You need to have it done so you can have a full understanding financially where you are. So as we walk through the property, what we're doing here is just writing down a list of repairs. And obviously with experience, this is going to become a lot easier for you. But here's just the basic big bullet points of things that we wanted to do. And I'm going to show you some pictures here of the before and why we made these decisions. But you can kind of go through this, but it's a very basic list of repairs, because this home really just needed some lipstick. This was not a major rehab. So we estimated the repair budget at $15,000. And I know once you see the house, you'll be like, there's no way you could have got that done for $15,000. And I'm here to tell you, you can. And it's amazing the places that you can find. There are companies out there that take in brand new, last year's model of things from Home Depot and Lowe's, and things that you could get, from faucet showers and everything that you would have from a home improvement point of view, and get it extremely cheap. And if you do your due diligence on locating these specific places around where you live, it could save you tens of thousands of dollars. Okay, so now keep in mind, this house only needed lipstick, so we didn't have to have a high repair budget on this to begin with. So let's run some of these numbers. I want to give you just a basic idea here. So the loan balance on this property was $332,000. And of course, I'm rounding the numbers here just to keep it simple for you. The back payments were $17,000. So what I needed to do is have a check for $17,000. In this particular case, an attorney with Chase Bank was representing the bank that I sent the check to. And I got to tell you, when I sent this check to the attorney calls the owner and says, hey, Steve, I've got this check here for your back payments, but it's coming from this guy named Chris Goff. Should I deposit this check? And he's like, yeah, deposit the check. He's just helping me out. Now, keep in mind, the attorney, they don't care. They just want to get paid, so they could just wipe this property off the books and say, hey, you're good to go. And they're going to get a portion of these proceeds here. Next, we found out that there was $5,700 in HOA dues. Okay, now we're going to throw this, this number into the equation to make sure that financially is going to make sense. Now, one of the great things, I have a great attorney. that can draft up all of this paperwork. And of course, I would recommend having an attorney draw up paperwork for any kind of seller finance deal, which this ultimately is. And anytime you're working with somebody in pre-foreclosure, have an attorney draw up the contracts, because this isn't something you really need to try to save a penny or two. Now it could be $3,000 for you, depending on where you live in the country. And that's just simply, hey, we got to calculate those numbers. Whatever that number is, you just need to calculate it when you're running these numbers. So the repair estimate was $15,000. So the total debt on the property now, to me as the investor, is $370,000. Now look at cash out of pocket. It's going to be the $38,000, which is going to be the back payment. So I got to have that come out of my pocket. I'm going to have the HOA dues come out of my pocket, the attorney cost, and the repair cost. So I'm going to need to have access to $38,000. Now, some of you may say, well, Chris, I don't have $38,000. Well, find it. We want it. We need to do this deal. It's going to be financially profitable. Find a family member, put it on a credit card, get a private investor, do something. You could even get hard money. It would kind of eat into your profits here, but you could actually do that. But just find a way. I hear so many people out there, it's like, well, I just don't have the money. Well, go figure it out. That's what we have to do. I mean, years ago, it's like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to find a way. And I think that's what's going to help propel you and separate you from all the people that go, well, I just can't do it because I don't have any money. Now, the ARV on this property was $479,000. Now, that would be kind of that tip-top shape ARV. So our max potential profit here would be $108,000. Now, keep in mind that this is just to acquire the property. We're going to have some additional expenses that I'm going to show you here at the end that we're going to have on there. So these are things that obviously we would calculate as much as we possibly can in the beginning before we would say, yes, we want to do this deal. Some other things I also want you to factor in is filing fees. So what we did to save money, again, I'm all about sharing tips on how to save money, not just make money. Obviously, I had my attorney draw up the paperwork. I physically took the paperwork, right? UPS'd it to the owner. He signed it in front of a notary, sent it back to me. So now I have a legit deal. I then took that paperwork to the county and filed it myself. It cost me $150 or so to file all of the paperwork. Now, once I do that, I own the property. So I didn't go to a title company and run through all that. Remember, I already did a basic title search. I already understand what's going on with it. I wanted to save money because I want to keep the budget as low as possible here. Unexpected repairs. And I'm going to tell you, we had some unexpected repairs on this deal I'm going to share with you. So agent commissions, think about, I was very lucky that the agent actually trying to sell the property on a short sale, she backed out of the deal and just kind of left it up to me and the owner, which was very nice of her, because in my mind, I was going to calculate the cost of that commission in my numbers. But now that I'm going to sell the property after I fix it up, am I going to use an agent there? And if you are, you need to estimate that cost. Next are the selling costs, what we call closing. So obviously, we're going to close this with a new buyer. It's generally going to be at a title company or closing attorney's office, and there's going to be those costs. Potential profits, does this make sense? You have to figure out, if I'm going to invest X dollar amount and I'm going to get X dollar amount in return, is that worth my time? Is that worth my investment? So you definitely have to look at potential profits. Now, if you're just getting started, you might say, hey, if I made 10 grand, that would be a heck of a deal. Where other investors that might have more experience might go after the bigger deals. So you have to look at, I think this is very personal for each person out there. It's not, hey, if you make less than 20, don't do the deal. I don't think it works that way. Next is insurance on the home. So one way to also save a little bit of money here is you could be named second insured on the previous owner's insurance policy, because we're going to keep that insurance policy on the property. You could also buy separate insurance, but hey, look, you're making payments to the bank and it's going to most likely include taxes and insurance, right? So there's already insurance on it. We could have the previous owner actually add us as second insured. It's going to save you a lot of money. Utilities for the home, right? So we just bought a house. So we're going to have to turn the utilities on to rehab the house and until we sell it. And of course, the monthly payment. So whatever the owner was paying to the bank, we have to continually make those payments each month until we sell the property. So let's talk about what could we do with this property. Number one, you could just sell it and get cashed out. And this is what I highly recommend that everybody does. Simple fact, there's due on sale clauses. I don't want to trigger bank stuff. What I want to do is get in, fix it up, and get out. And ultimately, that's what the owner wants too, right? They want to get this off their credit report. They want to be done with this burden. But you could actually sell or finance it back out. You could lease option it out, and you could use it as a rental. But like I said, the goal is to cash the seller out so they don't have to worry about it anymore. Let me show you a few before pictures. And a couple of things that I want to highlight here is just look at the floors, right? So there was no damage whatsoever to these floors. It was just that white tile, but it really felt like you were like in a hospital. It was just white everywhere. So we knew we wanted to really enhance the floors by changing it. Now, we don't want to pull the tile here to put new tile down because that would really just blow the budget. But I'm going to share with you what we actually did and the cost of that here shortly. Now, if you look all the way to the right, it's kind of dark there, but it's the backyard. There was no grass there. They had two huge dogs that just tore up everything. And of course, you could see the trees are just really overgrown. So just a couple of pics during the rehab, you could see the yellow notepad here where we had to measure all the cabinet doors. We found a lot of water damage to some of the doors, especially around this sink area. So our goal was, hey, let's just go in and reface it, put some new hardware on it, and it's going to be brand new. So there you go. Two boys. Yes, the boys actually help us do these rehabs, when they can. It's great experience for them. And you know what? It keeps them busy instead of busy on an iPad or a PlayStation. Over to the right, you can see how these trees were actually going over into the neighbor's property. So what do you think the neighbor's saying right now? It's like, thank you, please clean up these trees. So we wanted to get these trees trimmed back. All right, so let's look at the final pictures here. And one thing that I wanted to point out to you is we ended up changing the color of the outside of the house. Now, this was not originally planned, but after we started to improve the inside, the outside really started to look pretty bad. The one thing I didn't tell you that when we actually closed on the deal with signing the paperwork and filing, by me filing the paperwork, I never actually paid the HOAs. I decided to pay the HOA stuff when I eventually turned around and resold this property because this was going to be a fairly quick project. This wasn't a project that was going to take 6 months, to a year to try to rehab and sell. So when we decided to paint the outside, that's when we found out that you have to have HOA approval when you're changing the color. So here, in my mind, I haven't paid the HOA dues when I bought the house, and now I've got to go get permission. I went down and I got one of those huge chocolate chip cookies, at one of the grocery stores. And I went down to the HOA department, and it was kind of strange. When you go in this particular HOA, all the offices had no doors on them, like no doors. I thought that was just kind of weird. But so I walk in and I sat down with this lady and I was like, hi, my name is Chris, and we bought that property over here. And she's like, oh my gosh, you're the ones that bought that property? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. That property is looking so good. I couldn't tell you how many complaints we've had on that property from the neighbors. And I'm like, look what I brought you, a chocolate chip cookie, And I know that sounds so cheesy, but that's what I did. And I said, well, the reason I'm here is we need to change and repaint the outside. She goes, approved. I said, well, I didn't show you the color or anything. She goes, I don't care. It's approved. You guys are making my life so much easier, and the house is looking stunning from the outside. I drove down and looked at it the other day. And I'm like, oh, because I was sweating here because in my mind, I owe them money and they just approved this. So I'm like, yes. So I start to get up and she goes, Mr. Goff, the attorneys for the HOA called the other day and they can't figure out how you bought the property but didn't pay the HOA dues. And I said, well, I was planning on fixing up the property. We're going to sell this fairly quickly. And I figured at that closing, I would take it out of my proceeds. She goes, well, I don't really care, but they were just confused on how you did that. So I just start walking out like I don't want to even continue that conversation. And she goes, Chris, hold on 1 second. And I look over. Now, keep in mind, there's no doors on any of these office spaces. And she's writing on the back of her business card. She goes, here, I'm having a problem with this one too. And it was another property that was behind on HOA dues in the same neighborhood. I'm like, well, there you go. Now I've got another potential deal to look at. So it actually worked out in my favor the entire time. So just to kind of give you a reference of, kind of that before and after, you can see the before on the left, the after on the right, really cleaning up the trees, did some basic, just painting on the outside, cleaned up the landscaping and a good power wash. And we still couldn't even get some of the rust off the limestone here, but it worked out. So as we walked through the property, we ended up with this green. I'm here to tell you, this green wall in color was not our choice. We actually went down and they have recycled paint places. And we got, I think it was 15 gallons of paint for free. We'll make that color look good, but look what we did to the floor. So this is what we call an overlay, and it is like this marbling effect. Now, you do not have to pull up the existing tile to do that. They have some new technology now, which is awesome, and it's actually going to even be harder or stronger than concrete, and it just gives this beautiful marbling effect throughout the house. And I'm here to tell you, we got so lucky because when we called this contractor to do it, they were scheduled to do like 3 Starbucks. And the problem is that Starbucks put them on hold. So him as a company, he has employees that he has to pay. And he came in and he did the entire, not only did he do the inside floor here, he did the backside and a little bit of the front. And he only charges $2,500. He literally charges the amount of his cost plus the cost of the staff to keep them employed, keep them busy until they could start their Starbucks project. So it really did work out in our favor here. So as we kind of move into the main living area, you can see that light fixture we bought for $60 brand new. $60, yes. And you can see we did some basic staging. This is very basic, but this was a huge room. And I could tell you, when we did the open house, we had so many people walk through, and there's one thing that everybody talked about. It was just something that they couldn't get out of their mind. And we love to put those little pieces in our staging because that's how they remember you. And it was that wire tree above the fireplace. Every time somebody came through, it was just amazing how they'd be like, oh my gosh, I love that tree. So when you think about it from a marketing standpoint, when you're staging stuff, when they go home, what are they going to remember? They're going to remember that tree. They're going to remember that house. And that's going to help us sell this property much faster. We head back into the kitchen here. So that light fixture was the small companion of the other fixture, and that cost us $30 brand new. So go up into the kitchen, you can kind of see the flooring. It was just beautiful. You just imagine if you had a nice table there and so forth. Now, the one thing that when I took the pictures, we hadn't put the hardware on the cabinet. So yes, there was hardware on the cabinets, but we changed the dishwasher out, but the stove and microwave, we did not. But the one thing I want to point out to you is the actual cooktop on the island. So that was actually cracked. And we decided and purposely did not replace these items because we wanted to give a cash back incentive so the new owner could actually put in what they wanted. So I want you to think about that. We're going to give you cash back so you can put in what you want, because you know as good as I do, no matter what we would have put in here, somebody wouldn't have liked it, right? And they'd be like, oh, I don't like that. Why'd they put that in? So we just used it to our advantage, and we're going to give them that cash back instead of spending the money and putting something that they may not have wanted in the kitchen. So as we go upstairs, yes, we had new carpet. As you can see, we use that paint color throughout the entire house. We don't normally do that. We like to change some of the colors on different walls and so forth. But in this particular case, hey, we got the paint for free. Might as well just use it. So to the right, this is one of the bedrooms that his little girls live. So he had two little girls, and this is one of the bedrooms in there. And I want you to look at that particular light fixture that we put in here. Now, there was an older one in here. So one day we're working on the home, and we're actually installing a new front door, and a car pulls up. And two people get out of the car, and they start walking down the driveway. And this gentleman, he yells out, "Hey, are you Chris Goff?" And I'm like, maybe. And he said, "Hey, my name is Steve, the previous owner." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Hey, what's up, Steve?" And he walked up to me and he said something that I'll never forget. And first of all, he gave me a huge hug. And he said, "You have no idea what you just did for me and my family. Thank you." And it hit me. It just shows you how powerful this strategy is and how you can help others facing this same problem. So the only thing the owner wanted was these light fixtures. And after he gave me a hug, he said, "Chris, is there any way that I can get those light fixtures for my two girls because they really want them?" So these lights were memories that they had when they lived there. You know, the emotions and how important it was for those two little girls. So we boxed them up and we shipped them. So here you can see that this is the master with a nice walkout patio off the master. Now, just some basic tips here. That's not really a bed. That's actually cardboard boxes with a blow-up mattress sitting on top. So if you ever go through an open house, I probably wouldn't recommend that you go sit on the bed. And I can tell you, I learned that trick years ago when I actually sat on the bed and fell through. Here's the back side of the house. One thing, we try to keep things as simple as possible. The one thing that's going to probably strike your eye are the red flowers that sit against that white limestone. So, sometimes you just keep it simple. And I think simple is always better. Now, here's the ad that we actually wrote to market this property. We have probably one of the best copywriters on the planet on how she markets properties. And I know a lot of people may say, well, this seems very long. You're right. She does write longer ads because she's telling a story. And I'm not going to read the whole thing to you just for time's sake, but just hit pause on this video and read through this and you're going to see. But one thing that I do want to point out is that $5,000 cash back. Remember, we're going to give $5,000 back towards for that appliance upgrade. So let's look at the final numbers on this property. So the acquisition cost, if you remember, was $370,000. So this will include the loan balance plus the back payments, the HOA, which we didn't pay right away, the repairs, and the attorney fee to draft up the paperwork. Then we have our holding and closing. So we're going to have some other costs associated here, which we totaled up to be $27,300. These will include the monthly payments plus the utilities, plus the closing costs when we sell to the new buyer, additional repairs, which we didn't actually account for in the beginning because we didn't realize we were going to paint the outside. There were several other little things that we did to the property just to enhance it. And of course, that $5,000 cash back that we're given. So we need to incorporate all of these numbers into it. So it came out a little bit more than we actually anticipated, but nothing too surprising. And again, you would calculate this number in the beginning, right? So in this presentation, I'm just showing you near the end, but obviously in the beginning, you'd want to try to calculate as much as this cost in the beginning to make sure that, hey, this is going to be a deal that you want to pursue. So the total debt now on the property is $397,500. So we actually listed this at $479,900. We subtract the total debt on this, leaves us just over $82,000 profit. Now, we didn't use a real estate agent to sell the property, but here you can see it's extremely profitable and it paid off the loan. I think that's the most important. In the seller, this burden is gone. And sometimes the burden is just way bigger than making any kind of money on this property for the owner, right? So they don't have to worry about getting harassed. They don't have to worry about damaging their credit. We really solved a lot of problems. If you think about it, think of how many people we just helped. We helped the owner out by not going through the foreclosure process. We helped the bank out by making up the back payment and making payments and actually closing the loan out. Just think of the original realtor. That was probably a property that, she consciously, after I spoke with her, was probably felt bad on, that this was going to damage their credit for 2 years, helped her out probably mentally. You think of all the construction guys, the companies that we bought materials from, all the staff members, and you just imagine how many people, my attorney that drafted up the paperwork, the closing, the title company that we closed it at. What about the buyer? Right now they have a nice, beautiful home that they can move into. You are helping so many people through this process that it's really hard to envision that until you start really thinking about it. And that's the one thing that I absolutely love about this business. Hey, thanks for watching, and I hope you can take the knowledge and implement it. And be sure to click that like button and subscribe, as well as the notification bell, because my passion is to help others and help you be the best that you could be as a real estate investor. I put together a complete training series on pre-foreclosures where I could go into more detail and the specifics of each step. This training is going to give you a complete understanding of the process, which is going to help you close that next deal. Go and check that out now, and I'll see you on the next training.